Hello, fellow users of the internet. I did say I was gonna try and upload more videos of myself to get more comfortable with just, how I talk and everything, just to get some things out of the way or like really express myself without feeling the immediate judgment from people in my life, because I'm very certain they're tired of hearing about my issues just because like I need somebody to talk to and I feel like I do need an outlet. So the one thing that I wanted to talk about mostly because like this is something that has been a major event in my life to happen since I was pretty much put into my hometown, because it's a major life event. It's something that I spent a good majority of my life in, and that was in a good, not a majority, but a good amount of my life, and that was in a relationship. And I don't usually like talking about a lot of my problems, especially to people in my life, as much as like they get tired of hearing about it. It's more of events rather than how I feel about it personally. Like, oh yeah, he did this, I did that. It was a lot of events of back and forth, but I never actually tell people like how I feel about it in general, of how this made me feel like deep down. Um so it's been about, I'd say, almost to 2 years. We're coming up in a few months since I had broken up with my ex-fiance. And it has been a year since I almost my life because of this person. I'm not proud of it. I am quite ashamed of it, but it's also like, it is what it is. It happened. And, I'm not the first person to do it, and I know I'm not going to be the last person to do it. Obviously, it's a dumb decision to do, especially to do something like that over somebody else. But I wanted to talk about some things that, like, I had experienced within that relationship that just really affected me in a way that I can't tell other people about it. Meaning, I can just say it to a monitor where a bunch of eyes are going to see it, but they'll never see me or meet me. They'll just hear my story and move on. So yeah, it was selfish of me after I broke up with this person to still continue to keep them in my life, because they had been in my life for a long time before that. But there was a lot of things that I put up with, and there was a lot of things that he put up with me. And I knew deep down that this was a relationship that I could not endure for the rest of my life, even though, I did care about this person. I did love them. And I did try my best to show them with what I knew how, or what I was trying to portray. Because a lot of the times, I was always told, especially when I was younger, about how I kept doing a lot of things wrong. The way that I walked, the way that I talked, the way that I addressed myself. A lot of the time, anytime that I would speak, I was told that I sound condescending, that I sound rude, or that in general I wasn't a positive person to be around. And I think a lot of those conversations that I had, especially with people from my past, I brought it into that relationship to try and, you know, communicate better, or trying to be better, because that's one thing that I always started like way before I even graduated high school, before I even met this person, was that I wanted to go on this journey to become a better version of myself. And when I was in this relationship with this person, I felt a lot of the time that it was stagnant, because I didn't like who I was at that time. I really didn't, because I didn't like coming home to an angry household. When I was a kid, that was a lot of what I grew up with. Every time I come home, my dad was angry, my grandma was angry. And it was just like a lot of yelling, a lot of people telling me that I was doing something wrong, when in reality I wasn't doing anything at all. But I guess not doing anything also meant I was doing something wrong. And there was a lot that really went on with this whole relationship. And the thing was, is that like I said, I didn't like who I was. the reason why I didn't like who I was because I am a very reflective person, being that if you treat me a certain way, I will treat you that way back. It's not mature, but it's also like eye for an eye. If you're going to treat me this way, I'm going to treat you this way. If you don't like how I'm treating you, what makes you think that, I like how you're treating me? A lot of the times we'd have conversations, or I'd try to talk to him in the mornings, or I would just, see like, hey, how was your day or whatever. I would get snapped at a lot of the times for something that wasn't even my fault. And I think deep down it also made me feel like I was doing something wrong. So it kind of brought up some old past problems that I was trying to move forward from. And there was a lot of issues that started from this relationship from the very beginning. There was a lot of red flags that I chose to ignore, like anybody would when they really like somebody or they try to make it work with somebody. And there was a lot of events that happened that I had to endure, that I told myself, if you put up with this once, they're going to do it again. And if they're going to do it again, they're going to do it again. And are you ready to make that commitment for your life to keep dealing with these things that are going to keep happening and hurting you over and over again? Sorry, my nose is really itchy. Allergies. Anyways. So within the first year of the relationship, things were going good. I did want to be with this person. I was happy with them for the most being. And then come around to the first problem that we had. I remember I had just turned 21 a month before this person had turned 21. And for my birthday, all we did was play like a couple of card games and drink a little bit, called it good. And for his birthday, he wanted to have a drinking game with his cousins, and he drank a lot that night. And I remember him sitting next to me on the couch, and he whipped out his phone and proceeded to text somebody who sent him I remember seeing the text that said happy birthday with a heart emoji on it. And whenever I waited until he passed out drunk for me to look on his phone, because he was never a person to let me look on his phone. And when I saw those messages, I think that was the first time I ever felt my body genuinely shake in terror, because at the time I was living in a place that was 8 hours away. I had no family. I didn't really have friends. I didn't have anybody I could run to immediately at the time to pull me from that situation, because we were living with his grandma and there was a lot of issues going on in there that also didn't help with my anxiety. And I'm not saying like anybody has to cater to that, but it's more of those were the issues I was dealing with internally. So after all that happened, I ended up moving to a town next to my hometown, and I tried to work on it with him. Silly me. That didn't end up happening. And what made it worse was at the time that he, was texting this person, he was sexting them, he was talking to them for a few weeks, and this was during the time that I had found out that I was pregnant. And mind you, at the time, I didn't really think like, oh yeah, that was a possibility for me. And I was kind of excited, but I was also kind of scared, but we had both come to this agreement of what we would do in said situation. And at the time, I was contemplating between both situations of what I was going to do. And sadly, he ruins that first pregnancy for me. I was like, you can kind of fill in the lines about how that decision went, however, which way you want. You can tell me to go to hell. I don't care. But after that, I tried to make it work with him for another 2-3 years after said situation, because I think this was what happened after our first year, shortly after that. And there was a time where we started living with his parents after that in my hometown, and I was working a housekeeping job where his mom was my manager, the GM at the place at the time, because she's the reason that I had the job in the first place. And I remember working this job, and it was doing door dashing at the same time. I was basically working 2 jobs to try and save up for, a place of our own, because I didn't want to keep living with his parents. I didn't want to keep living with other people. That is what it is. And another major thing that happened after that was his dad had given him a new phone, and he didn't reset his other phone that he told me he was going to keep reset, but he kept pushing it off. So I remember looking through that phone, and when I looked through that phone, I saw that he was saving some inappropriate pictures and videos of his ex to private folders, and saw that he was also paying for OnlyFans. So not only was I working 2 jobs, barely seeing him at home, and we were already having the issues that we were having, that did not help with it. I didn't tell him about it for months because I just thought maybe if I can get through the first time, I could try and push through the second time of him betraying me and lying to me and all this stuff. And silly me, that didn't happen. I eventually, there was this day that happened. It was the day of our anniversary, and I had a cousin of mine who he didn't like, and she was pregnant at the time, and I wanted to help her because she didn't have anybody else. The baby dad wasn't involved in her pregnancy, so I went with her up to another town after I got out of work because I told them I had a family emergency, so I left work early, but I moved my ex's car that I took to work, parked it in the back, and went with my cousin to go to her appointment. Then whenever I came back, before I had left, after I parked the car or whatever, I accidentally pulled the steering fluid pipe out, and I spent 2 hours talking to my fiance on the phone, and I was like asking him for help if he could possibly ask his sister if she can come because I know she would have. And he told me that he didn't want to bother her. Mind you, this was the day of our anniversary after a good amount of time. And when he told me that he didn't want to bother her, I kind of had to figure the situation out on my own. I had to DoorDash me some power steering fluid, get the situation fixed, even though it was raining, it was windy, and honestly, I was worried that the hood was going to snap off my fingers because I didn't have anybody else to help me. And I was trying to hurry to make it home so that way we could have at least a nice dinner. And I was honestly just frustrated because it was like, why couldn't, there was no way, if there was no way for you to help me, somebody else would have, if that made sense, because he, in his words, he didn't want to bother his sister about it. Like, okay. Then the very next day after that, after I worked another shift, came back home, his mom had told me, and at this time, this was whenever his mom wasn't even my manager anymore. She quit, and she was getting ready to move. This was at a very complicated time. She sat me down and she told me about this rumor that was going on in my work where people were saying that I was cheating on my ex-fiance with some random guy in a brown van, which was not true. It was with my cousin because I went with her to help her. And during this conversation that she had with me, she told me that even if her son had done anything, or even if I had done anything, or whatever it was, that, that's their son, they're always going to pick his side. So never mind the fact that they didn't know about the first events or any events in between that from till then. That was the final straw that kind of just broke the camel's back of, I have been in this family for a good amount of time, and they would never consider me an actual part of their family. They would consider me an extension of their family member rather than this is a whole family to them, if that makes sense. And I'm kind of rambling on mostly because, like I said, I'm not used to talking about this stuff. But honestly, within that time frame from the first major event to the last event, of a lot of the stuff that I put up with, a lot of the time when I'd go to sleep, I would cry myself to sleep right next to him. And, he would just not say anything. He'd lay there looking away from me. And there would be times where I'd come up to him and I'd cry to him, asking him, why wasn't I enough for you? Because I was trying hard to forgive him while also distracting myself, working to try and save up for a place for our own. And there was a conversation that we had where he had gotten upset with me, asking me why I hadn't forgiven him yet. It's been such and such how long, I should have forgiven him by now at that point in time. After, even then, whenever it happened, after we had this discussion about how we were going to work it out, I told him that it's going to take some time, and it's going to take my time, and I don't want you to rush this. I want to move past it. But when we had that conversation, that was just more stuff piled on. And during this whole thing, I already felt like none of this was worth it. Like, I felt like nothing that I did was going to be good enough because, like I said, a lot of people always told me, everything that I did wrong. And I thought that everything that I was trying to do was right. And for him, that wasn't. And it just made things worse. And honestly, do I want the person back? No. Is there good qualities to this person that they have? Yes. But I also think that there's the worst of the worst can absolutely overshadow all of the small good things. Because whenever he cheated on me, I remember him telling me that the reason why he did it was because she was nice to him. Mind you, like I said, if he didn't like how I was talking to him, what made him think that I liked the way he was talking to me? Because I remember constantly asking him to, at first kindly asking him to stop snapping at me, until I started, reflecting the same behavior, where it came from kindly asking to demanding that he stop snapping at me for things that weren't even my fault, or just sit there and talk to me like a normal person. And it seems like there was a lot of like communication blockage, where his communication wasn't matching with my kind of communication, because I was very sensitive to tone, where it's like, I understand you're upset, but please don't raise your voice at me, don't yell at me, don't snap at me. And for him, it was more of, I wasn't saying the right things, I wasn't doing the right things to him. At least that's from my perspective. I mean, I can't say anything about the way his communication mix matched with mine, but it is what it is at this point. So the reason why I wanted to make this video was because I think about it a lot. I think about it as in, like, I kind of reflect on it, and I think, like, maybe what if I was a really bad person? What if I was like this, or what if I was like that? And it's like, you know what? There were things, like warning signs in the beginning, that I could have listened to, but I instead ignored, that wouldn't have led me down this path of not only being lied to, not only being used, not only being just basically treated like I wasn't an actual person, like unacknowledged from especially a lot of his family, to treat me like they did. Now, I'm not saying they treated me like terribly or had any vendetta against me, but it also just felt like there was this wall that they kept up for themselves of, you are not my family until, everybody else decides so. I guess I can't really describe it that well, but I think like in coming up in the next few months or whatever, whenever I come to a conclusion after all of this, is what it would be like. I felt very much invisible. I felt very much unacknowledged. And for the most part, I really did feel like a burden. Like I wasn't as loved as they said I was. I didn't feel like my ex-fiance loved me as much as he said he did, because I couldn't understand why somebody who loves you would tell you terrible things or nasty things of like, I love you, but I don't like you as a person. And I think that phrase in itself is like the most impactful thing. It's because like, thanks, dude. Like, thank you for confirming the thing that I already had an issue with myself in the beginning. Like, you don't like me, guess what? I don't like me either. And right now I've reached to the point in my life where it's like, there is nothing that anybody can tell me now that I haven't already told myself, or that the most significant person in my life hasn't already told me, that it matters anymore. Because I've already had to deal with issues after I stopped talking with my ex. And honestly, it's really stupid to have to keep dealing with it, because I'm not dealing with it anymore. I decided that straight after my date, and I'm glad that I don't have to deal with those issues. But if this person ever sees those again, if I could explain this better, I really would. I would really try and pronunciate myself more, or just like try to change the way that I talk, just to try and get the message across of, this was a very traumatic thing for me, because it really showed me how less of a person I am, how little of a person I am, to that I don't matter. Right? So that's where I come with the conclusion of, my existence doesn't matter, because I don't have a lot of close family, and the people that I tried to let close in, did all these things to me. And I'm not saying like, some of it wasn't deserved, but it's also like, why would you tell somebody something like that? Just to get the point across of, oh, you're never here, you're always working. I'm always working because I wanted to get an apartment. I wanted us to have our own things, and I wanted us to be prepared. And you told me that you don't like me. So yeah, that is something that I've been dealing with for the past year and a half. Am I going to keep dealing with it? Probably. And do I feel like I'm going to get over it anytime soon? I feel like I am going to carry it for a while, but more of just as another like weight on my shoulder of I can move past this, but it's still always going to be there. So yeah, if you stuck around long enough for this video, thank you, and bye.